So this is another installment of the Solving Tefillah series, and what I want to sort of talk about now is the format of a lot of the tools that we have in the Sidur, in the Machzor, whatever tools you're using to engage in the Tefillah process. So the tools that we have are 2,000 years old. They're from the time of the Gemara and earlier, and all those tools, so they have a certain kind of format, and I think that format sometimes can be a little disconcerting or confusing for people, and I wanted to sort of show what the format is and why it is the way that it is. And so you have to sort of remember as a background that the process of tefillah has really nothing to do with the tools. In other words, when you ask for things that the Sidur says, or when you're reading things that are in the Sidur, that's not actually what tefillah is. That's a tool you're using to create tefillah, and tefillah is really about you essentially bringing your more superficial awareness in contact with, in alignment with your deeper sense of self, like your deeper inner self. So deep down inside, there's all kinds of things that you want, that you care about, that are important to you. And then on a more superficial level of your consciousness, there are things that you say that you want, that you think about, that you're interested in, kind of like more superficially. And so sometimes those things get out of sync. And the process of tefillah is about sort of kind of bringing them back in the line with each other, where it's like, you know what, like, I think I want to make $1 million, but like, kind of just on the surface, that's kind of what I feel like I want. But like, why do I want that? And deep inside, what is that, what is that connecting to? Is it because deep inside I really want to have a sense of security or independence, and there are like deeper layers of each of the things that you want on the more external, superficial level of your consciousness. And then there's like, that there's, and you can kind of try to get in touch with the deeper things. And the claim, what we're saying, what tefillah is really about, is that when you get in touch with those deeper things, those deeper wantings that are underneath all the superficial ones are actually coming and flowing in from Hashem's self, because Hashem is kind of like the innermost self of you. So, and to see more about that, that's got to check out the Who is Hashem series. So, but the point here is that given that that's the process of tefillah, so when you use the tools like the Sidur, so what you're really trying to do is you are trying to create that inner alignment, and the Sidur is a tool to do that. So now when you actually look at the tools, so I think it's a little hard for us sometimes to see how that's actually happening. And so just the main example is that, let's just to focus on the Shmona Esrei, the 19 brachos that we say 3 times a day. So that's what we call the Shmona Esrei. So that whole segment, it's basically broken into like 3 parts, and the middle section, which is the longest one, is what's called the bakashot, the requests. And you'll actually see that in a lot of the Sidurim and a lot of the different types of things that we're saying in the Sidur toolkit are all formatted in the form of bakashot, of requests like that. As an example, it's going to be Yom Kippur tonight, and if you look in the Machzor, so there's all kinds of statements and comments and ideas that are all phrased as requests. We're asking Hashem for forgiveness. We are asking Hashem for success. We're asking Hashem for love. All these different requests in that way, and it's a little strange because, like, given that the whole process here is not about the more primitive idea that we're praying, which is about like there's a guy in the sky who has a lot of stuff, and we are asking him for that stuff so we can have what we need. So we're asking God for forgiveness because he has all the forgiveness and we need him to give us that. Or we're asking God for money because he has all the money and we need him to give us some of that. Like, we're not doing that. We're actually sort of, if you want to check out the Yom Kippur video, just sort of think about this a little more, but what we're actually trying to do is we're trying to forgive ourselves and sort of like create an awareness that forgiveness is something which is important and that we care about it, and to sort of get more in touch with the need to be forgiven and to forgive others, and to sort of let go of all of the grudges and all of the pain that we have inflicted against ourselves, that other people have inflicted against us, that we have inflicted against others. And so we're trying to sort of like cleanse ourselves of all the resentment and all of the grudges and all of the keeping score that we tend to do when we make mistakes, or others make mistakes against us, either on purpose or by accident. And so we're in a process of sort of letting go on Yom Kippur, of just sort of like rising above all of the petty, errors, and sort of trying to see the bigger picture, which is that life is not about our errors or about the errors of others. Life is about constant progress and constant, evolution and creation. And as opposed to like getting very, very bogged down on all of the errors. So that's the process of Yom Kippur. and and built on top of the process of Rosh Hashanah, and which is the process of becoming aware of the different ways that we have made mistakes. And so that's strange, given that the text that we use is a lot of requesting. We're asking Hashem to forgive us again and again and again. And the question is the whole idea of asking Hashem for anything seems to really conflict with the idea that we are simply trying to deepen our own selves, trying to get in touch with our inner needs and our inner wantings that are really kind of coming from Hashem. Why do we say all these things in the form of requests, given that that's actually our goal? So it's, just in terms of the forgiveness example, it's deep inside you want to forgive yourself. You want to let go of all of your errors. You want to forgive others. But on the more superficial aspect of your awareness, you don't. You have a very hard time letting go of grudges and actually not resenting somebody who hurt you or attacked you. It's very difficult to do that. So that's really the tefillah process for Yom Kippur, is about bringing those things in alignment and sort of letting the inner ability to let go and to forgive flow into your outer consciousness. And then it's now I'm going to just let it all go and just be at peace. And all the people that I feel really wrong, and people who really wronged you, really did bad things to you, you can just sort of let all them go. And it just, it just doesn't matter, at least for one day, and you can even try to do it for longer. It's basically a training process to help you to let go of things. So if you think about that, so why is it in a request form? So I want to just sort of illustrate here that I think the reason why we have a hard time relating to the idea of requests in a clear way is because we, generally speaking, when we are engaged in the process of tefillah using a siddur, we fail one of the major components of kavanah that we're supposed to have. The kavanah basically means that, translated usually as intent. It means that you are present. You are the things you're saying and things you're thinking about are in sync. You have perspectives, you have ideas, and you have thoughts, and then you are expressing them verbally to sort of put them out into the outside world and clarify them, and almost hear yourself say them. And then when you're doing that, that's what kavanah actually means, that you're actually saying things that you mean, and you also have this awareness that you are saying them to someone else, because Hashem is a presence that fills all of reality, and so you're trying to sort of express that inner perspective and ideas towards Hashem. So those two aspects of kavanah, the understanding of what it is that you're saying and saying it from the inside out, and the awareness that there's someone else there. So we tend to fail the first one very intensely. Definitely in the English-speaking communities, this is and other foreign language besides Hebrew, this is a major issue. And even if you speak Hebrew and fluently, it's still a difficult problem, because we are so habituated to thinking about tefillah in an unhealthy way, and we don't think about the words that are in the siddur very much. So these things make it hard for us to actually, say the words that we're reading in the siddur actually from a place of personal connection and thoughtfulness. And so we have, if you want to see how to solve that problem, there's a couple of other videos about that. But just for our purposes right now, given that we have that problem, that we have a hard time actually connecting to and really doing the kavanah dynamic in a way that's genuine. So it's hard to really relate to the request concept at all clearly, because we're so out of sync, we're so off in how we think about the siddur, that the actual concept, that the actual request idea is viewed in some kind of random, disjointed, detached kind of way. So if you actually were able to put yourself into the headspace of, well, I actually am thinking these things that are in the siddur, I am genuinely asking for them from a real place, and you could think about it as the same way that you think about if you'd be making a request from another person, then you'd be able to see very clearly how this works and why it works. So let's just use that as an analogy to help us unlock this a little bit, which is I want you to think about what happens when you ask for something that you need or want from another person that's in your life. Now let's just use the easiest example. Let's say it's you with your parent, with your dad, let's say. So you go to your father and you say, Dad, I need, $20,000 to buy a car, or I need $20,000. Let's say you're young, you don't have your own money yet, or you don't have so much money, you have a little money, and you need some money from your dad to buy something that's a relatively large purchase, like a car. So you go to your dad and you ask. Now, I want you to sort of think for real. Try to make this build out the scenario in your mind and sort of live inside of it. And look around in this situation. What exactly is happening emotionally and conceptually and internally for you as you're asking for this, as you're going through this process? When you do this, again, it depends somewhat on your relationship with your dad, but even if you have a great relationship, there's always a certain sense and by the way, unless you have a very intense sense of entitlement, like if you just simply have this idea, well, my dad is just supposed to take care of me all the time, and that's just the end of it. I don't need to think about that or understand that that's a gift of any kind. You just kind of have the entitlement perspective. Then you'll have a very hard time thinking about this at all. But let's assume that you don't have an entitlement perspective, because an entitlement perspective is fundamentally a false perspective. You are not entitled to anything official, like objectively. Maybe somebody trained you over your life to feel entitled because they kept giving you things. That's a separate problem, which we can't let that mix in here, because then it starts to distort the whole discussion. So assuming that you see clearly that there's another person in your life who has more of something which you need, let's say money in this case, and you have a relationship with them, they love you, you love them, you have some kind of ongoing connection, and you're going to now approach them to ask for something which you need, and let's say it's $20,000. So you're going to feel a certain sense of, I'm the dependent one, I'm the one who is, vulnerable, and I'm struggling, and I need help from this other person who has the security or the power or the advantage in the situation, and I'm going to have to go to them sort of like as a supplicant now to make this request for something that it is that I need. And emotionally, that's difficult for us to do, because for us to kind of approach as a dependent on another person is something which is like it conveys to us the idea or the perspective that maybe we are not someone. We are kind of like, it kind of debilitates our awareness of ourselves. It reduces our perception of ourselves as being someone who actually is powerful and important and real. And since we constantly intuit that we are someone special and someone important, but when we have experiences that sort of press down on that, so then it can undermine that perspective. And this clash is painful to suddenly experience yourself as, maybe I'm not so special, or I'm not so powerful, or I'm not so important, because look, I have to go to another person who, we're supposed to both be powerful people and special people, and I have to lower myself in a certain kind of way and ask for them from a place of vulnerability to do something that I need. And so that action of doing that, the opening up and the becoming vulnerable in that way towards the potential, hierarchy relationship where now the other person is above you, is a very difficult thing to do. And when we do it, so what we want is for the other person to then sort of relate to that request from a place of closeness and of love. In other words, like if you ask for somebody, if you make a request like that, which creates that kind of imbalance from a place of vulnerability, and then they are very harsh to you. Let's say they treat you in a way that's, they kind of hit you right where you're vulnerable, and they say, well, I would give you the money, but you're such a loser, so I'm not going to. Or look, you have no money of your own, so I'm not going to ever help you because you're worthless. These are very harsh comments that kind of hit you right where it is that you're currently vulnerable in the situation, because you already feel a little bit like, maybe I'm not so great because look what I have to do. I have to ask for these things. And so when someone does that, obviously that's a super painful thing to experience. And on the other hand, if the person kind of reaches out to you and says, I'm with you in this, I want to help you, and I want to take care of you, that kind of reinforcement and support is very, very validating and really kind of heals the pain of suddenly feeling like maybe you're not as special as you thought. And so that those two options are super significant, because that's really what it's about. The whole interaction, the significance of the interaction is how do they treat you in the context of your opening up in terms of your vulnerability. Now, the funny thing is that I never said anything about the person actually fulfilling the request. In other words, when you ask your dad for $20,000, let's say he says no. So if he just says no in a vacuum, then it can feel like he's, basically writing you off and saying, no, you're not important enough. But if he makes you feel loved and supported and is there with you and says, I can't give you $20,000 because, right now I'm not able to do that, but here's what we're going to do to help you through this, or we're going to give you something else, or I'm going to find a way to be, or I'll advise you, or whatever it is that he does that makes you feel like he's in it with you, even though he's not giving you the specific thing that you're asking for, that is already going to create a tremendous connection between you and your dad in that situation. In other words, it builds a greater connection and a greater oneness, a greater bridge between the two selves by the fact that he is involving himself in your request in that way. So that process is really not so much about the result. In other words, you think you need $20,000, and that's definitely the end result. That's the fruit that you want to get to. But the whole process, the tree that leads to that fruit, you really are that's the part that's much more significant. Let's say 20 years down the line, the actual $20,000 itself will not be the thing that you remember whether you got it or not. In other words, let's say he doesn't give it to you. But let's say he's very with you in the experience and is very supportive. So that the result 20 years down the line will be like, you'll remember how your dad was there for you in a time of need. The actual need will be not at all significant. It'll be like whatever the need was, and they're like, oh, but my dad was the kind of person who was always there for me whenever I needed him, in whatever way he could be. That is what you will remember. It will create that dynamic of connection in a very, very intense way, because you were vulnerable and then you were accepted in that space of vulnerability. And so that really is the underlying theme and concept of the request format that is found so often in the Siddur, both in Shemona Esrei itself and in every other context of the Siddur. There's so many requests where people are asking in all the different liturgy that we have in the Machzor and in the Siddur. And it all revolves around when you make a request to the self of all selves that is really, your support system. Like Hashem is like the ultimate support system. He is every relationship. He's your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, your son, your daughter, your grandparents. Like, he is all being, and he is the source of all being. And whatever it is that you need in your life, that you're scared about, that you wonder about, that you are interested in having in your life, so you turn to Hashem to ask for those things, because Hashem is the source of all being. And you make yourself vulnerable, and that's what you're supposed to do using the request format. It's built in a request format to help you access a sense of dependent vulnerability, that it's like, I am a part of this much larger situation, and my larger relationship, that Hashem is the person that I'm asking for all these things from, because he's the one who has those things, and he's taking care of me. And then it's designed to help you build the awareness that Hashem is actually in these things with you, and he's trying to give you all the time what it is that you want, what it is that you need. And you might think you need $20,000. You might think you need to find the right person to marry. You might think you need to find a better job. And like Hashem's like, well, listen, like this particular thing I can't give you right now in the way that you're asking, but I'm with you in this other way, and here's what I'm going to give you this way. And that's why our job is sort of like look at the world as we're making all these requests and try to assess, well, this is what I think I need. But like Hashem's giving me all these things, so like, what am I supposed to do with all these things? He's giving them to me because he's with me, and he's trying to give me what I need. So like, I think I need that, but like, I'm getting this. So if I'm getting this, must be this is what I actually need for now, at least. And maybe I'll get that a different time. Maybe I won't. But like the actual, the fixation on the getting the specific thing that it is that I want, that's called iyun tefillah in the Gemara in Brachos, which is describing that, I think it's Daf Lamed maybe, it's describing the idea that when you look towards the things that you're asking for, and you constantly hope to get the specific thing you're asking for, it's going to cause you a lot of pain, because you're expecting to get a certain result, but the process of tefillah was never about the result. So what we're doing is we're just trying to use the format of request to create this awareness of vulnerability and connection with Hashem, and then he's going to give us whatever it is that he's already trying to give us that is good for us, and we're essentially trying to deepen our awareness of that flow of Hashem's giving into our lives. Now, that's only going to really be a functional approach when you learn and remember and know that Hashem is constantly trying to give, not just trying, is actively giving you the things that you need all the time. Now, if you have an idea that Hashem is a guy in the sky who's just watching you and taking notes, and he's going to punish you for doing bad things, that's a childish and wrong perspective of what the Torah is claiming Hashem is. Now, so if you want to use the Torah system, and you want to use the Tefillah system, and you want to access all the incredible, empowerment that the system is about, that is also based in truth. In other words, this stuff is all true too. But if you want to actually use this effectively, you have to know what Tefillah is and how it works and how to use the bakashos. You have to access genuine vulnerability. And when you say the things you're saying in the Machzor, for example, on Yom Kippur, you're asking for forgiveness. You need to actually connect to the idea of that in a vulnerable, emotional way, based on clear thoughts, and then understand who Hashem is. He's the one who is El Tov V'Salach. He's always in a state of forgiveness, and and to sort of understand how that picture works. So when you have that understanding, then it suddenly becomes very, very powerful and effective. But if you have a more fragmented or immature perspective, it's going to be much harder to use this effectively, which is why the real important process here is to constantly learn more about these things. You have to learn the tefillah. You have to learn what tefillah is. You have to learn where that works inside of you and keep deepening your awareness and understanding of that. You have to learn about Hashem, and there's so much to learn about Hashem also, and there's so many things to read. And just one a great book to read about this is Olat HaRaya, is Rav Kook's Perush on the Siddur. He himself has a whole Perush on the Siddur. It's incredible to read. It's a great thing to check out. But in terms of Hashem also, there's so many things to read about Hashem and learn about Hashem that really start to destroy some of the more primitive perspectives that are a little bit more pervasive, that God, there's like something called God, he's a guy in the sky, and that he's sort of out to get you, or whatever version of that you have. There's so much more to know. So I hope that clarifies the idea of the requests specifically, how to use them, and there's obviously it's not like it's going to solve the problem instantaneously for you, but there's a certain idea here that you can start to sort of unpack and transform what it is that you're experiencing as you're using the bakashot formats that you'll see a lot in the Siddur, in the Machzor, and all the different times you're engaging in this process. So I hope that was clear and interesting, and looking forward to seeing you in the next video.